But we're going to have banged up Bills on here momentarily. But what did you take away from what Ron was able to tell us?
Well, yeah, I think that'll segue into the injury report that I was kind of previewing earlier. So let's take a look at this because that is my main concern right now. Like, I feel very confident. I feel good about Josh Allen going on a heater, but this is what we're dealing with right now. And like you said, if we can get Taron Johnson back, that's big. The fact that Rasul Douglas should be back, that's also big. And hopefully Dodson. I mean, those three are huge. And then let's take a look at the rest of them now. Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, Gabe Davis, Sam Martin, Taylor Rapp, and Balin Spector did not practice today. Taron Johnson was limited, and Douglas and Dodson practiced in some capacity. So like I said, the final three are huge. The first six are also big, but if the final three can all suit up, I feel a lot better. And I also feel a lot better considering that Terrell Bernard was literally carted off, and now they're saying that it looks like he avoided worst case scenario, and there might be a slim chance that he could still potentially play. I mean, we'll get a better answer here coming up, but either way, I feel a lot better than I did, let's say, third quarter, fourth quarter on Monday night. So I think that segues us perfectly.
Yeah, and we have our special injury guest. I've been meaning to have Dr. Kyle Trimble on all season. I talk to him quite frequently, but it's great to have. I mean, there's no better time than now in a divisional round playoff game that has so much meaning, a lot more meaning than a week 4 game coming through. We really appreciate you, Kyle. Thank you so much for the super chat. Before Dr. Kyle Trimble comes on, that means the world to us, Kyle. Thank you so much. But it's time to welcome to the stage and to the forefront Banged Up Bills. Kyle, how are you doing today? And you got your work cut out for you this week, huh?
I do. Thanks for having me on, guys. I definitely have my work cut out for me. Thankfully, there's stuff that carries over from last week to this week, especially for the Chiefs stuff, but just a ton of information to kind of sift through and find out where the truth lies in between all the different things we're seeing.
Starting the offensive side, not ton there, but Gabe Davis, a guy that many thought was a 1 week thing. We saw some Bills players saying we're going to play for Gabe. We hope he come back. Early reports were maybe a grade 1, maybe a situation to where he was able to play after 1 week off. What's it looking like for Gabe in a game and a team that usually does not like to see Gabe Davis? So what's it looking like on the offensive side?
You hope that he can come back and practice some capacity this week. We saw a lot of guys do not participate this week, which isn't surprising because it's only Wednesday, especially 2 days after a game like that. They just need rest. It's a cold game. They just need time to kind of really give their bodies a chance to rest and recover. Gabe has had a week and then some. The issue with the PCL injury is the fact that stops the tibia from moving posteriorly. So the knee's going to hyperextend if he tries to push off it or if he tries to jump and land on it there. So he could do additional damage to it if he were to try to play through that and really attack using the leg. But even if you're bracing up, work on stability with the quads and hamstrings, there's a chance that he could land on the ground again, injure it further. He could hyperextend a little bit and cause that instability that he would have there. So I want to see at least a limited practice out of him this week, see if he can test it out there. The concern is the PCL could be lingering a little bit more, and maybe he misses this game. We'll just have to wait and see, but we know that Harrison Phillips suffered this injury, I think about 2 or 3 years ago against the Bears, and he was out about 3 weeks with the same injury. So I know defensive tackle position is different than a wide receiver position, but they're still having to push off the leg. They're still having to pivot, and you just want to make sure that you're not going to lead to an early exit because you're trying to play through something you shouldn't be playing through.
Yeah, for sure. What's your best guess? Do you think he gives it a go, or do you think he's someone that may have to wait if they were able to advance?
I'm leaning toward he might have to wait a little bit just because it just seems like that, just with the PCL. Like, could he play if it was Super Bowl? Maybe, but I just think if you think of the team, especially with all the issues they have, and they can account for him on offense, give him another week to rest up, and then you really attack him. And that's a fresh guy, 2 weeks off if you play an AFC title game.
Weird step he took against Miami. That was a strange scenario in that game. Unfortunate there for him when he does seem to play well at this time of year. Whether he has struggles or not prior is not usually the issue. He does show up against the Chiefs specifically, and he does play well in stretches here. So they will have to rely on Shakir. But as we switch sides now to the defensive side, lots to go over there, mostly namely at the linebacker and cornerback positions. Let's start at linebacker with Dodson. Looks like McDermott said himself he was the closest one ready to go. seems that that's going to be a bracing situation, maybe some pain relief, getting ready to go. At the linebackers being injured now, I think he's forced to play, right?
Pretty much. I mean, with all the injuries we saw on Monday night, I mean, it's fortunate that he had a week off to get rest and rehab, and he can at least come back and play at an acceptable level. The concern when he suffered the injury against Miami was, I thought initially AC joint sprain, then you're kind of looking at, and the AC joint sprain is more laterally compressed, where you kind of land on the side, and he hit more over the top. And then you start looking at, you start thinking maybe rotator cuff, start thinking labrum. And in either case, you can just put a harness on and play, and there's definitely going to be weakness, some instability in there. But if you do a lot of strengthening in the area and just give it some time to recover, you can at least get through the next few games here. We saw Jordan Phillips play through the same type of injury last year, though his was a lot more severe and he had to miss some time. But the issue is, as long as Dodson doesn't try to hit super hard with his left shoulder, I mean, he can still wrap up guys and still, do the things he needs to. But if he's not being a missile leaning with his left shoulder, he's going to be able to get through the game and at least be acceptable in pass coverage and everything else.
Good. That's a good addition that the Bills really need. And then kind of next to him, Spector. That back was a weird trying to recover the fumble, the knee right to the back. Seems to always be unlucky with these injuries. No shot there. Are we thinking his running mate might not play there?
It's going to come down to pain. I mean, when you get a direct shot like that, you think maybe kidney, and if that was the case, they would be a little more forthcoming, I think, with that, because you don't try to play through a bruised kidney, bruised internal organs like that. Then you start thinking, is there some type of transverse process, spinous process fracture? Is there just a lot of spasming in the area? We don't know that for exactly, but even if that's the case, it just comes down to pain issue. Like, even if there's a fracture in the back, it just comes down to, can you numb it up enough? Because they're attachment points for the spine, but it's not a stability thing where it's like, if he were to have that fracture, he couldn't play through the injury there. So it might just come down to pain, but considering the depth issues they have there, give him a shot and get him back out there.
That's kind of where I'm at. It's not a position where they kind of like corner where maybe they can mix and match, but I mean, they really need to figure something out at linebacker. And then lastly, kind of at the linebacker, not lastly, Milano's obviously out. Doesn't seem like there's any hope. I was kind of in the camp that maybe he'd return, but I have not heard good things from my sources. Are we not thinking likely on Milano? And then lastly, Bernard right next to him too. That looked way worse. I saw some people say Achilles. It didn't look Achilles, but then it went to broken foot with the air cast. Luckily it wasn't that. So we're getting better. Are we thinking the Gabe Davis situation where it survive and get him? Or are we thinking that he pushes to play, especially obviously with no Milano, maybe no, where are you at with Bernard?
I mentioned the Milano thing. The little bit that I do hear, I'm not hearing good things of Milano either. So anybody that's thinking Super Bowl, it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. And that's fine. They've filled in around him, and that's just how it is. So as for Bernard, he did have an injury against the Chargers. He suffered what appeared to be a possible medial ankle sprain / high ankle sprain. And the reason I say a slash part with that is because every time it looks like a medial ankle sprain, it ends up kind of being a high ankle sprain anyway. We saw that with John Brown a few years ago. We saw it with Ed Oliver a few years ago. So it just kind of comes down to, there's definitely a type of instability already. When his foot hit the turf, and it was obviously a very hard turf due to the cold and whatnot, he laterally inverted the foot, so it turned inwards. So he definitely damaged some of the outside ligaments. So if you already have some damage from the inside ligaments from when he injured against the Chargers, and that's still healing up, you add some outside damage in there too, leading to greater instability in there. Obviously, the fact that he didn't fracture the leg is great, because that would not have been able to come back. I don't care how tough you are. But if there's already instability in there, there might be some pain, swelling, already damage. But if there's already damage in there, he might be able to just say, hey, let's play through this, tape it up a little bit. So at some point with some of that stuff, you can't really damage it worse than it really is unless you break it. So this might have been a benefit that there was maybe some damage in already. It might just come down to, can they get the shoe on? Can they tape it up? Can he give enough stability in there to at least get through the game? And it just is what it is. But if he gets a limited practice in, there's a decent shot he plays on Sunday.
Absolutely. And kind of as you kind of continue down to the corner room, how are you feeling about Rasul Douglas playing? Are you feeling in a pretty good situation there? Like, where do you feel about Rasul? Where do you feel about the rest of the corners?
Douglas, he said he's going to play. He was saying that last week. I was actually talking with Thad Brown today out of Rochester, and he was saying that, Rasul was very confident. He was almost like mad, as the way Thad put it, that he couldn't play last week. The recap real quick, he had got friendly fire from Micah Hyde, and it was at least a contusion with a possibility of MCL sprain. And at that point, how effective can you be as a cornerback trying to pivot off that leg constantly? So I think it was the right move to sit him out, even if he felt he could have played, because these guys will say they can play and they're going to be hopping around one leg and saying it's no big deal. So the fact that we saw the other injuries in the cornerback room this week is good that Douglas at least got a week off and is ready to go. So no concerns with him moving forward. As for the other cornerbacks, we saw Christian Brentford go down trying to take out Pat Freiermuth on that fumble that wasn't a fumble. And it's just unfortunate how that play ended up. But by video, there was concern for a meniscal tear on the medial side. If it's small enough, we've seen guys try to play through those injuries and still be somewhat effective. I mean, they might need to get things cleaned out after the season, but that's after the season. So it might just come down to pain, swelling. Can he get full range of motion out of it? And you could see during the game that he was trying to work through it, keep the knee loose and see if he couldn't come back at some point. Fortunately, they didn't need him, but it might just come down to can they get things in check. So he'll be one to watch just to see if they can get him out there. And then the other cornerback asked for Teron Johnson. The stats weren't great for guys that suffer more than one concussion in a season. I had posted that guys that suffered a concussion and then a second concussion take longer on average to come back in a median 12 days, which is twice as long as what we need for him to come back. It's also important to note that he did clear concussion protocol the previous 4 times he's had concussions, which is pretty impressive. I mean, in terms of clearing it within under a week, so he hasn't missed any games due to concussions. So the fact he's limited today, even a workout or in a walkthrough, suggests that he's at least maybe in stage 3. If it is, that's impressive. But each concussion is unique, so it's hard to predict against this stuff. We're just going off of what the research shows, the averages, and with head injuries, how they've taken that stuff seriously in the NFL football. We don't want to be messing around with that and causing long-term damage to these guys.
Absolutely. So no, do you think any chance of Taryn, or do you think he's out for the week?
The fact he's limited gives me a shot. I mean, if he do not participate, I'd be like, okay, he's not going to play. But the fact that he limited, there's a shot, which, I mean, anytime I see guys who I don't think are going to play and they play, great, you proved me wrong. I'm just some guy on a couch with a physical therapy degree giving my 2 cents there. If I'm in the room, that's one thing, but I'm just giving my thoughts, and I'm happy to be wrong because that's only going to benefit the Buffalo Bills to see their guys out there playing.
I was going to say, what's your best idea of what the defense could look like? Because the defensive line, luckily, is healthy, and then the 2 safeties with Hyde and Poyer. But really, it's the middle of the field between the linebackers and then Taron Johnson as the nickelback, and then on the outside with the corners. So I guess just looking at it from the linebacker and corner perspective, what's your best idea of what the depth chart is looking like and what the starting lineup could look like?
What it boils down to is next guy up. But I mean, you're looking at Teron Johnson. If he's out, you got Cam Lewis up in there. And then I don't know that you can put Taylor Rapp down. I know they brought him down. They've also brought Jordan Poyer down. So they're going to try to mix and match guys to get them out there. Obviously, you lose some depth on that end, but you could also bring in DeMar Hamlin, who played for Taylor Rapp last week. And, he could just be the extra depth guy, and then you start moving chess pieces around. So if you're going to be missing the middle of the field, you're going to have to bring some of those guys down and force them to play that in the secondary. And then, the linebacker role, they don't have a ton of other guys on the practice squad for linebacker. So it's like, you'd probably just try to mix and match and whoever you can get out there. Klein might be starting, Dodson, Williams will have to be a depth guy. Cause I mean, every time I hear his name pop up, it's don't let him get out there, cause he's going to be exposed, but he's got to get some playing time. So, Sean McDermott, this is his bread and butter defense. He's going to find a way to mix and match. There's guys much smarter than me that know how to mix and match that to, maximize different assignments and matchups, but just bring anybody down that's hard hitting and put him in the linebacker role just so that you can get through this game and hopefully win.
And then I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but Sam Martin, is that likely out for him now that they brought in Matt Hawk today?
It pretty much would be. I mean, the fact that he's a punt and that muscle was still, it was definitely strained. So the fact that he was able to loosen up and at least get one more punt off and then still hold, which was promising, but I don't see how he can punt effectively because you need to generate so much power off that left leg. Even though you're kicking up with the right leg, he still has to plant on that left leg and he has to extend his hips. And there's just a lot of momentum off of that there. And then he has to hop back down and then try to run down the field. I don't know how he would play. And I mean, they're smart to bring in Matt Hawk. He's familiar with Reed Ferguson. He's familiar with Tyler Bass. He knows the setup. It's going to take some time to get back up to speed. But if he plays, I mean, I want to find out the drugs he's on.
Very interesting. And then lastly, Jordan Phillips supposed to be back. Any reason why? I mean, those don't really need. That's the one position I wouldn't say. You think that's more what it's about, the need there at the DT?
Yeah. I believe I think most of the beat reporters, including Elena Getzenberg, even said that, he's eligible to come back, but they haven't opened the 21-day window up yet. I mean, he did dislocate his wrist. I'm sure he's still going through rehab. I mean, even though he can come back in a few games, like we thought that he could come back against Miami, and then that's even did say that, and then they put him in injury reserve. So it comes down to a numbers game.
Makes sense.
Yeah, why rush him back out there? I mean, what's another week of rehab? And if you don't have the spot to put him on, who are you cutting for him? I mean, the defensive line's pretty solid right now. I wouldn't want to cut Linval Joseph to have Jordan Phillips back on. I mean, just wait till there's an injury, then pop him back in there and plug and play at that point.
Yeah. Plus, they're already inactivating Puna Ford right now, so they just don't have the spot. Luckily, that one is one healthy position. Kyle, thank you so much for all of your injury updates. Give us your hey, injuries aside, what do you think is going to happen on Sunday night? Like, give us your best picture, and then obviously, actually, anything KC related we should be worried about on their side. I mean, obviously, anything you were watching or anything you noticed.
There was a few things with Casey. So Derek Nanati is the defensive tackle. He suffered what looked to be a left tricep injury late in the second quarter. It wasn't great view because it was on broadcast. So he kind of got bowled over, and I don't know if he had his arm pushed back when he was trying to extend it, which could cause the tricep strain. I assume that's what it is because he fell back, and then you can tell his arm was kind of hanging off to the side. It was originally an elbow, and then they transitioned to a tricep today on the injury report. So if it is a true tricep strain, it's going to be really tough to block and try to swim through and just get everything moving with those arms moving forward there. So they have pretty good defensive tackle depth from what I've seen, at least on the defensive line as a whole there. So I think they could probably count for him. I don't know that he's a starter. It looks like they rotate a lot of guys in their defensive line from looking at his snap counts. And then, Kadarius Toney, who missed last week due to a hip and ankle injury. I don't have a ton of information on that. Justin Ross, I'm surprised he's even playing football. I mean, with all the injuries he had coming out of Clemson, he did have a hamstring injury. I'm looking up right now when he suffered the injury. He suffered it in week 18, and then he was unable to practice most of last week before missing. So who knows if he's going to go. They got Sky Moore, who's come back from a knee injury, knee irritation, suffered back, I believe, week 15. So they could be a swap out if they need to with that. Wayne Morris, their offensive tackle, missed last week due to concussion. He's coming back, but they also have Donovan Smith, who worked through a neck injury, missed late half of the season. He's a starter, though. So they have a lot of injuries on the injury report, but I wouldn't read too much into it because a lot of the guys are practicing full. They're fairly healthy. They're in a better position from an injury standpoint than the Bills, but that's just how it goes. And, we just have to find out who really has what it takes on Sunday. And then as for prediction, I'm going to go Bills 27, Chiefs 22, and we make a final defensive stop and, shut them down, and move on to the AFC title game.
There it is.
I have one more quick one.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Do we have an update on Von Miller? Because it looked like he was finally starting to get back into form on Monday. So is he ramping up now? Obviously we're in the thick of the playoffs, and this is when the time is supposed to be here for Von Miller. So do you have any inside information about Von Miller and whether or not he's feeling back to himself?
I don't have any inside information as to whether he's feeling back to normal. I think he probably feels normal, but it just the things that his brain wants to do and his body wants to do just haven't been clicking. I mean, we've been seeing improvements. I saw there was one play in the game where he had a real nice spin move and got in the backfield and he didn't quite make that connection with Mason Rudolph, but you see him just make that one step and get a little bit more every time, and they're limiting his snap counts so that he's not getting tired and then he's becoming ineffective. And I know a lot of people can't stand the fact he's getting paid all that money and he's not making, being productive, but he's chipping away every time. You see him just do a little bit more, just flashes here and there. And that's what we're expecting generally coming off an ACL tear. So it's just maybe he makes that big move against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he did that last year when he played Kansas City in the regular season. We saw that in other times where he's just he's there. I'm hoping maybe he just finally starts getting it. Just that all he needed is one play from him. we don't need vintage Von Miller. That'd be great, but we've seen one play and be in a key moment, and suddenly he's going to be great, like Kyer Elam, like Balin Spector, like the guys that just step up in the right moment. So we're going to see him hopefully back to more normal next week, or not next week, next year. But right now, I just want one big play that could be the game changer.